Well, that's it. I am no longer employed. I quit my job. I felt that 5 years was a good amount of time to, pack it up and look on to the next thing. If you're new to the channel, I have posted videos on personal finance, buying a house, my vlogs where I commute to and from work, because what I used to do was commute. I used to commute a lot when I worked in the office before this whole thing happened last year. And it was called the commuter experience. That was because I was commuting 1.5 hours each way to get to work. I would ride the bus, I would ride the train, but I've been working remote since March 2020. And being that I'm working remote now, I think the next opportunity that I'm going to be doing would be a more remote role. I mean, I could turn on the camera, I could film a few YouTube videos, and this is all done remotely. I'm at my desk right now in front of my computer looking over some things, and this is just a feeling that I haven't had in a long time, not having to work. So I quit that, and if you're curious why I haven't been posting as much lately, it's because I did quit posting YouTube videos. So in some ways I quit that. What I want to say is I needed to focus on other things. That being the case, let me just reflect a little bit on what I did at the company that I just left and what I did over the 5 years. The 5-year anniversary of my employment with the company that I work for, and I'll refrain from saying the company, obviously LinkedIn exists, so do as you will. But basically 5 years ago, or a little over 5 years ago, I moved to Los Angeles with my girlfriend, or now fiance, then girlfriend. And we just wanted to move out here and start something new. I worked for this company in the customer support org, or the product support org, under the TSA team. And no, I wasn't security at the airport, but it stood for Technical Solutions Analyst. And what we did was we worked as basically business analysts between our clients and the engineering and tech teams. Being someone who came from a technical role, I was kind of lucky to get into that position because I didn't originally apply for that position. I did apply for a product analyst role, which was more on the support side, calls, talking with clients and troubleshooting their issues. And I just remember going through the interview process. I think I had maybe 5 interviews that day. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 interviewers, but 4 interviews. And there were 2 leads at the time, great guys, and they've gone on and moved up in their ranks. One guy became a senior product manager, and I congratulated him right before I left. But that interview process was interesting because they asked me puzzle questions like, the die-hard question of if you have 2 water jugs, how would you measure out a certain amount of water? There was another analyst that asked me, if you have a robot that can only do 2 actions forward and backward, how would you get him to this point? Something like that. It was the manager at the time for, a pod in that organization that pulled in one of her leads to interview me for 15 minutes. And he was the team lead for the Technical Solutions Analyst team. And he was just like, yeah, what's your background? And just know that this role isn't that type of role. I'm like, that's fine. I'm eager to work at this company, blah, 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 all those things. And I fortunately got to do that job instead of the one I originally applied for. Did that job for about 2 years, or 1.5 to 2 years. And then in my latter 6 months of those 2 years, I transitioned into an associate software engineering role. Before this, I was a software developer. And you might be thinking, why did you not go into another software development role or programming role? And to be honest, when I was in Texas, where I was previously, finding a job out in Los Angeles coming from out of state was very difficult. I was still fresh out of college with the less than 2 years experience. So a lot of people, a lot of recruiters, a lot of hiring managers were like, you don't have enough experience. So, I took the first thing that I could get just so we can get established out here. At the time, my fiance wanted to go back to school. She decided to refrain from that and ended up getting a job at a major studio. You're in Los Angeles, so you're gonna maybe try working for one of those big six studios. And she did that. She did that for a few years, and then she ended up going into a remote role as a product manager. And that's where she's been since. Once I got back into tech, becoming a software engineer or an associate, I was put onto some cool projects, working on bugs and stuff. But one of the coolest projects that I worked within my first month was implementing, Japanese search for our product. And that was really interesting because I don't know Japanese. So I had to do a lot of, user research. I had to talk to clients, talk to analysts that work with Japanese speaking clients. I would be emailing back and forth these people, trying to figure out how do they want their search experience to be. And that was quite an experience because at the time there was an engineer on my team who was a senior level engineer, and he was kind of like my mentor. And he thought at first it wasn't going to be that big of a deal or a big project. It ended up being a little bit bigger than what we anticipated, and it took us a few months to implement, but we got it done. And that was quite an experience. From there, we started working on other things. We were on an old version of our code. We wanted to get that up into the cloud. And by the cloud, I mean Amazon Web Services, or, basically not on our own servers. And that was basically majority of the 3 years that I was in tech. Just a few months after my transition into tech, I was then promoted to a regular level software engineer, and I was at that level for about two years. Yeah, 2 years, I think, or 2.5 years. But anyways, within that span of time, we were able to do this whole migration to the cloud. We basically built out a bunch of services around a framework that would give other teams around the company to use search technology or Elasticsearch, and that was the primary technology that me and my team worked on. There are also a bunch of other things that happened along the way, like deciding how we would do certain things. I remember one of our architects was building out our data store service or our registry service, and it was also keeping track of state. There were two different services at the time, but they were connecting to the same database, and we didn't know how to kind of keep track of both from two different services and sharing the same database. So what we had to do there was decide to use an ORM, and there's a bunch of them like Spring, Django for Java, Python, and then in .NET or C# you have .NET Core, .NET Framework. So we decided to do that, and it helped in certain aspects, but then there were some advantages that were given up. One of the advantages was being able to commit code or version control code. If you're familiar with Git, before there was a disconnect between database code and application code or the service code. So that's why it was difficult before that choice of going with an ORM. One of the disadvantages, however, was using an ORM. There's certain libraries and things that the language itself or the framework itself provides that could be inefficient when generating certain queries. And that was due part to we were using an older version or a version that was available at the time. And since we were working on this project for over 2 years, we just never kept up with upgrades. More recently, I think the reason why I quit this job ultimately was a bunch of different factors. My last video that I posted, and if you're familiar with my channel, my grandma passed away this year, so that was hard. One of the factors that was really hard the last year and a half was not being able to see family because of this whole pandemic. And you're like, oh, why don't you go visit them or travel? Well, they were in the Philippines. My grandma and my mom were in the Philippines, so that was a little nerve-wracking to try and go and visit them, being that they are in a very hot spot of the world with this whole illness going on. Also, the factor of our company, or the company that I previously worked for wanted people to get back into the office. I mean, in hindsight, there were incidents of like there was a case of the illness in the office, so I think that kind of decelerated that move back to the office. It was always weird to me that they wanted to push for people back into the seats of the office when the CEO of the company is also remote, working on the East Coast. Didn't make sense to me, and I didn't want to have to deal with that as a factor. And I understand there are people who do like being in the office, and that's cool and all. But to be honest, working remote for the last year and a half, I've been so much more productive. I don't have to stress about my commute or on the commuter experience. So, I didn't really need or want to give that up. So I started looking for a new job that are remote friendly. Another factor is, when you're a public company, there are things that the company can decide that affects, the business itself. There were a few layoffs that happened. Fortunately, my team, my role itself wasn't affected, but that wasn't, taken too lightly. I wasn't in a position to say, oh, I'm untouchable, because at the end of the day, when you work for a company, you're not untouchable. But at the end of the day, if it's not in the best interest of the company, they can let you go. So that was a fear that I had. In my next roles, whatever they may be, if I'm working for a company, that fear will always be there. There's no getting away from that. But, that doesn't mean I'm not going to do my best to put everything that I am into the company that I work for at the time. That's just one factor that I didn't like, because there was layoffs after layoffs. There's acquisitions that caused the stock price to plummet because Wall Street didn't believe in the company. And this is all public information regarding the company that I work at. So if you, again, LinkedIn exists, look it up. That was a factor. But to say that is not to bring down any of the experiences that I had with my teammates. Like, the team that I was with were some of the best people that I've worked with in my career. I only had two different jobs, right? Like, I had a job for a year and 8 months, and then I had this job for the last 5 years. The last 5 years is a big majority of the time. My direct manager, he's a great guy. He taught me a good bunch about not just technical stuff or stuff on the job, but even outside of work in terms of investing and options trading and knowing that kind of stuff like stocks and investments. My original manager, when I moved over to technology, he was promoted to director. He was doing amazing things. He was managing people in India. He was managing people in Ukraine. He was managing people, dispersed all over the world, basically. And he still gave time to meet with me one-on-one, almost every week, and then every other week. And then I had teammates. I had a guy who started a little bit after me. He was fresh out of college after he moved from Israel to California. And he had a hungry attitude. He has a lot of energy, and we worked on a lot of the same things, being teammates, and him teaching me stuff, me teaching him stuff. And we basically were at the level where we understood what the services we're working on. We had senior level engineers, we had architects who understood the overview of the whole system and what it needed to be, and built out like the core components. And then it was up to us to delve into like either bugs or add on these enhancements and features to make our services better. I will always remember like the first guy. Like, I remember my team before I transitioned to the team was only like one person, and there was a previous manager there. And if any of them watch this, I'm pretty sure they would know who I'm talking about, but he was probably the one that I worked with before I even transitioned to the team. But other than that, life has to go on. Sometimes there are other opportunities out there that you have to go and check out. And sometimes you have to quit doing certain things to grow. And that's really what happened for me. I stopped posting YouTube videos, like I said, because I was focusing on studying for interviews. I'd work long hours sometimes, and then after that, I wouldn't rest. I had to study up on interviews and study up on my, fundamentals, computer science, data structures, algorithms, all those kinds of things, because I wanted to see what other opportunities were out there. Sure, I could have stuck it out at my company that I was at, go to a promotion, get a pay raise, which leads me to say I'm currently not working, but I will be starting a new job soon, probably in a different video. Just want to get on here, let everyone know everything's cool. I hope to be posting more videos. I haven't said this in a while, but thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for coming to the channel, checking them out if you haven't already done so. Destroy the like button, destroy the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. If you learned something from this video, whether it's like something that motivated you or something new about me that you're interested in learning more about, let me know down in the comments below. But also take that and get to work. I'm no longer commuting to work, but the whole point of this channel is taking the things that I provide to my audience. Maybe there's some little tidbit in there that you can take and go work with it. Because that's the commuter experience to me. It's not just sitting in 1.5 hour traffic, riding on a train, riding on a bus. It's taking what you learn and going to work with it. So with that, thanks again, and I'll catch y'all next time.